Hello, so I'm just going to show you the insides of a Udemy Studio. I hope you'll forgive the audio because I'm just using a consumer camera here because I don't want to break down or get the heavy equipment out. But I just wanted to show you a hardware setup if you're shooting green screen or some of the audio and some of the little tips and tricks just to help you create your own recording studio. Now it doesn't have to be for Udemy courses, you could use this as a technique for any small video studio, but I just wanted to show you what can be achieved in a very small space. Okay, so let's have a look at the lighting first. I've got a very simple lighting ratio. I've got a fill light here and then 2 as my main, and I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it, but I've got a flag here which behind that is some lights. These are all standard daylight bulb lights which shine onto a green screen background, and I've got them both sides, and I've also got a rim light there, and so that when I'm standing here, and I will zoom in, you can see the lighting effect I'm getting. So I've got 2 lights here, the main lights, a fill here which is just filling a little bit, and you can still see some shadow on this side of the face. I've got a rim over that shoulder which I just showed you, and then I've got 2 lots of lights which are flagged behind onto this green screen. One of the biggest issues in a small studio is stands. You don't want lots of stands where they can trip you up. A couple of things you can do. On this one I've got boom arms which are actually wall mounted, and get heavy duty ones when you're going to be putting lights or heavy lights on them. And as you can see, my lights then can sit on them and I can push them out. Now you can see some wooden sticks here. These are what are affectionately known in the trade as stick-in-a cans. And as you can see, what we've got is 2 cans on the floor with concrete in, 2 pieces of wood, and now we can strap anything to them with some simple heavy duty clamps, and we can use them as light stands. I use them for flags, lights, all sorts of things. So flags are basically pieces of black card. I've got some over here that will stop light bouncing where I don't want it to. And I'd strap them to a stick-in-a-can. So these are some of the stick-in-a-cans are so versatile for lights and anything you want to sort of put in a small space. Highly recommend you make some of them. Just all you need is some old paint tins, some concrete in the bottom, some bits of wood like that. I think they're 2 by 1 inch pieces of wood, and away you go. So that's the stands and that's the lighting. Now obviously it's a green screen studio, so all I've got here is a green screen panel. As you can see, it's usually a little bit more pulled out than that. I've got some creases on the left hand side there, but as you can see, that's a green screen panel in the background that's being lit, and I've made sure, because I'm doing talking heads, it's floor to ceiling. Now I'm not in a high space. You'll notice my lights, I've put them as high as I can to avoid reflection. Another little thing I want to point out to you, you'll notice that I've got, this is actually black material which I have attached to the roof of the studio. You'll notice also I've got black walls. Now the reason I've done that is because black stops light bouncing, which means that my lights go exactly where I want them to go. So that's really, really important. You'll also see that I've got some sound absorbing foam on the walls. I could probably do a little bit more, but that helps. And one of the things that does really help is don't have a concrete floor. I've got carpet tiles, and then I've overlaid that with a very soft lino, and that helps some of the soundproofing as well. On the subject of soundproofing, I've soundproofed the back of this door with tiles, and I've also put strips around the edge so that when it seals there's a dramatic difference. Now what I'm going to do is open the door, and if you just listen to the difference, you'll see how important good soundproofing, or this isn't completely soundproof studio, but this is semi-soundproofed. So let's just see how that sounds. So if you just allow a moment's silence before and then listen afterwards. Now that's very quiet at the moment because it's the middle of the day and everybody's at work, but I am actually between a main road and a motorway, so this is essential for me to control some of the background noise. So noise is really, really important. The other thing I wanted to sort of mention as well, behind the green screen there are actually some drop down backdrops of different colours, so that when I do hangouts or something like that, the green, I've just got to unclip it around the top. You can see I've just got some hooks in the top, and then I've just got some grips with holes, and I can just quickly take the green screen down when I need to. Now you'll notice I've curved it around. That's because I don't have a very wide studio space, so putting that curve around the edge, and normally I would get rid of that crease and tighten it out a little bit, but putting that curve around the edge gives me a little bit of extra width. So when you're thinking you're in a small space, you might think, why not put a rolling backdrop? I would love to, but it wouldn't be wide enough for what I'm shooting. I need a wider background with the green screen. So that's the green screen and a little bit about some of the soundproofing. So my video camera of choice, this is quite interesting because I use the Canon XF100. Now it's one of the smallest form factor video cameras that is actually accepted by the BBC. So it's very high quality codec comes out of it, and I use this camera as my main studio camera. Now you can see in the thing it's got face tracking, which is really important. I don't want to be worrying about whether my face is in focus when I'm shooting. DSLRs don't do this type of tracking unless you've got one of the newer ones, and they do, but they're still not as good as a traditional camcorder. And a lot of modern consumer level camcorders, like what I'm actually filming on now, have face tracking as well. So you don't have to get one of these high-end cameras, but I have got this one here. You've also seen I've got it on a ball head joint mounted on a stand, and that now allows me to just adjust it a tiny bit if I need to. You'll notice I'm quite a way away from the background, and I've done that for compression. I don't want the camera close to me because that's gonna not do my face any favors. So let me see if I can get a slightly better angle. That's a slightly better angle, and you can see the Canon XF100 there. I've also got another boom arm set up here, and you can see the end of it there, and anytime I want I can just plug another camera into the system, and I can actually run many cameras. I can run up to about 6 cameras into my broadcast splitter, which I'll show you in a little while. So having places to mount cameras is quite important. Now here we've got our Macbook, which is then feeding into our TVS broadcaster, which I'll show you in a little while, but it's sending out a slideshow to a second monitor, which is actually going into, it's being treated as a second monitor in the TVS, and I'll show you that in a moment. So what that essentially means is that as I select slides, my background is going to change. So let me show you that. Now, filming with live chroma keying is very powerful because it can reduce the amount of editing time afterwards. So what we've got here is I've got a simple, and hopefully you can see that in the thing. I've just got a simple PowerPoint clicker, or keynote clicker, a little presenter. All I do is click this button and I can bring in my slides. And you see all of this is live, so you can do this as you're talking, so you're not worried about the graphics. And because I'm using a keynote presentation with green screen, I can set this as my background. I can bring anything I want into this background. So hopefully you can begin to see the power of green screen, because if you're used to doing talking heads presentations, maybe you're used to let's just clear that screen for you. Maybe you're used to filming, standing up and doing presentations, and this format will really help you. One of the things that's really important as well, and I see this is a common mistake that people make when they use green screen. Can you see I'm not too close to the camera? If I get my face too close to the screen, what's going to happen is it's like someone standing really close to you and talking to you. it's not that comfortable for people. So sort of an upper third or upper half shot like this is better when you're going to do talking heads than being close. If you haven't got the room and you do talking heads and it's very close, one of the things you can do is do picture in picture, and I know Len Smith uses this technique. And picture in picture, them take your face further away, and it won't be so dominant on the screen. So you don't you don't want to be too much in people's face, so to speak, when you're recording. So having a good distance in the studio is actually quite important. Now, for my panning's a little bit up and down here, I do apologise. I'm on a monopod, and this is an excellent little monopod. It's a Manfrotto 561 BH DV, and it's on a gimbal, and you can pan and do all sorts of stuff. But anyway, so coming back to this, but the other thing you can see now is while I'm presenting, I can see myself. So the beauty of that is, you know, if I make any visual mistakes, I can see it straight away. And also as well, when we do bring up the screen, if you can see where the camera position is just above the monitor, so you can't really see it in the dark, you can just see it glowing green at the top. If you look at that now, you can see that my eyes don't have to travel very far to see. Now you see I've got a monitor above. I think you can just make that out. I've also got a monitor above the camera. I've tried that. Doesn't work quite as well because you can see the eye movement more when it's going up. But when it's dropping down, when you talk normally, often you will drop your eyes down and lift them back up. So when the teleprompter is below, that's the best way. Obviously, the absolute best way is to actually use a proper teleprompter, which we have got, but because I'm shooting so far away, it's really difficult for me to read the words because it uses an iPad. So I find this works best in this situation. Now, at the heart of my system is this little Blackmagic TVS. You're seeing the back of it. There's nothing to see on the front. And what this is a broadcast splitter. Now, over this side, we have here, hopefully you can see this clearly, that's two computers coming in and being treated as video cameras. And that's important to understand. So I've got a PC, which I've got here. This is a Dell Studio. It's a second generation i7 with 8 GB of RAM. It's got silent fans in it, which is important because I need to keep the noise down in here so it doesn't affect my studio recordings. Most desktop PCs are quite easy to get quiet, and I've also put some soundproofing foam in it. But that PC now acts as a camera. So you'll see later I'm going to show you a screenshot from a camera, so I can do screen capture, but it's essentially coming from this PC, and that is then going into my splitter as a camera. Now you do have to purchase an output card, or sometimes you just come straight out of the HDMI port, but I actually prefer to use a capture card to send the signal out, but you can just take it straight out into the TVS Studio. Well, these cost about £600 for the splitter. And this is the budget end. You can keep spending upwards, but to be honest, the functionality you get per cost is not that great. And they've probably come down in price now because they've just released the 4K version, which not many people are going to need. And then I've got two SDI cables here, which come from my cameras. The reason I'm using SDIs is that over long runs of cable, HDMI signal breaks down, so you need SDI. But most people, SDI cameras tend to be very, very expensive usually. You don't get them on consumer cameras. So what we have to do is we have to take the HDMI from the camera, and we have to put that into the SDI here. So I'm just going to show you one that I found on Amazon. Okay, now as you can see, it's a HDMI 3G TOSDI audio splitter. It's actually HDMI to SDI. So the HDMI comes in here, and then the SDI comes out. So what this does, takes the HDMI signal, converts it into SDI, and that then can go into the back of the TVS over long cable runs. Now if you buy Blackmagic versions of this, they're about £200 each. This one I bought on Amazon, and these are £40 each. They're Chinese. They're not copies, they're just converters. They're Chinese versions on Amazon. And they're about £40 each, which is a massive saving considering I've got 4 of these, I believe. 3 or 4 of these, so I can run 3 or 4 cameras at once if I need to. So that's a real top tip for you. If you're going to be running your HDMI cable over a long distance, convert it on a short HDMI and then convert it to SDI. And the other thing to remember is when you have a camera, make sure you've got clean HDMI out. In other words, it can send a HDMI out signal that's got none of your on-screen graphics showing over it, and then that can be sent out and captured by these types of devices. So clean HDMI out, even in a consumer level camera like this, is really important. Now, as you can see, we've mounted all this equipment in a rack, a 19-inch mobile portable rack. Although I don't take it anywhere, because once you get it all set up, especially the audio, you don't want to nudge anything because it's so difficult. I'll show you the audio in a moment. So what you can see here is a very small TV. Now again, people spend a fortune on the panels, but if you can find a small 1920 by 1080 TV like I've done here, you can buy special brackets, which you can see on the side. You can mount them in. What this now gives me is the switcher. So I'm going to control this through some software I've got, which you can't see at the moment, but I'll show you in a moment. But it allows me to choose what's displaying. And as you can see, I'm changing, and you'll see the red box move along. So right now, let me go back to the MacBook. I know you can just see my head in the top because I'm kneeling down and filming this, but that's the MacBook output, which is a slideshow, is now being used as a backdrop for my green screen shoot. So this is how it's done. It's done here. If, however, on the PC, remember the MacBook is being treated as a camera input, so anything you put on the MacBook will come in here as a video camera. Same on the PC. I'm going to switch to that now, and you're going to see that I've got that on the screen. And then this is just to enable me to know what's being selected on the splitter. But if I go back over here, and let me just zoom in, you can see what's actually being output here, which is also being shown on here on the right hand side. So my output is there, and that goes out to there. So I can stand here and record, and I know what's coming out of the system. So how do I record all of this? Okay, so these two monitors here, you'll notice I've got, you count the monitors in the studio, it gets interesting because I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 monitors. These two monitors are the PC monitor, and then a third output is into this monitor down here. So I've got a graphics card that's outputting to this monitor, and a third one that's outputting into the back of the TVS, which is what you're seeing on the screen here. And then when I output the output onto the main screen, it's coming from my PC into the TVS Studio splitter and onto that back screen there. But what I want to show you is this little piece of software. It's called Atem Plus, and what this allows you to do, if you're using the TVS, it allows you to you're getting some phasing here unfortunately, but hopefully you can see it. As I select different things, I'm checking MacBook, I can change to this. This allows me to change any backdrop. As you can see here now, I'm just going to change some of these for you. As I click those, I can create different camera choices with different green screen backdrops, so I can shoot multiple options. And you see it becomes quite powerful then in choosing my background. So my background is interchangeable, and all I've got to do is set it to one of these. This is a key part of the system. Without this, I'd be in big trouble. So I just wanted to share what mic I'm using. I'm using the Audio Technica Pro 70, which you can see here. It's an XLR mic. I use an XLR system. It's just high quality input. And this little Lav Mic is a lovely little mic. It costs about £100, but I've used Rode NTG2. I've used all sorts of things. And the reason I prefer this one is because it's directional. Most lav mics are omnidirectional. This is actually a directional lav mic, which is very rare to find. Really helps when you're in a high noise area like I am, between a motorway and a main road. So I really need to control the floor to noise ratio. This allows me to get my voice the mic very close to my voice and keep any background sound very far away. And that really, really helps. So that's the mic I've come to use. Okay, so I just want to show you a couple of things that I've got set up. Now I use this. This is a mic amp. So this allows me to amplify the mic output. So if you're getting low volume on a mic and you just want to increase the volume and get a little bit more out of it, then I recommend something like this. The Studio V3. Let me turn it the right way up. And this is typical YouTube style video, so hopefully you don't mind the wobbliness and stuff. So as you can see, I've got that set to neutral. I've got my input quite high, but my output isn't that high. One of the important things with using equipment like this is to make sure as the sound comes through the system that all the audio levels are not peaking. So that's quite important. Now the next little thing, and this is the Behringer Shark FBQ 100. This is really important. What this does is enables me to delay the audio. So if I'm having audio sync issues, because audio tends to travel faster than video, so when you start using separate mics and audio, it can be quite hard to sync. And it took me a little while to find this because it's not advertised very well for what it really does, but it's an audio delay unit. So I've got 12 milliseconds of audio delay on this. Then the signal from my video camera and my mic setup match as they come into the system, so I don't have to do any syncing afterwards. Again, that's XLR. I'm just going to come up now. So I've got my signal in. I've got a bit of a boost on my mic with the amp. Comes into the Shark. That sets it at the correct sync. So now this audio comes in, as you can see at the back, it comes in here. I'm using the Xenyx X1622 USB. It's a Behringer equipment. Most of my equipment's Behringer. Not because I particularly like it, but budget-wise, for what I'm doing, it's perfectly adequate. And I needed something that would give me a side chain output. This is really important because the signal's coming into that mic. I'm going to clean the audio up, and I'm going to show my equipment that does that. I'm going to clean the audio up, remove the background noise, and do a few little tricks on the audio as it comes in. And it needs to have a sidechain output. What that basically does, brings the audio in. Let me see if I can just show you that. This is the sidechain input here. Comes out of this, and then that goes into the other audio equipment. It sends it through the filters or through the equipment, and then brings it back in so that it can then be output here to a analog to digital converter, which I'll show you in a moment. So this is the audio in the bottom of my rack. So you can see I've got the TV at the top. I've got a couple of shelves for equipment that don't fit in a rack normally. And then I've got the equipment at the bottom. Now the graphic equalizer at the bottom here. This is the Ultragraph Pro. This is the FBQ 6200. Now what I've done here is I've taken down the low end, the bass, and I've taken down some of the high level frequency because that tends to be where the noise are, and I don't need that for my voice. So that's what that does. Essentially, it cuts out a bit of the audio bands that I don't need. And it goes from that into this Multigate Pro at the top here. Now this Multigate Pro here, what this is going to do, you can't see it right now, but this will enable me to set a level on the audio that any sound below will not come into the recording. So that's really good for background noise if you can soundproof a little bit. What this essentially does is says everything below this noise level we're going to ignore. That means that when I do talk, I have to talk quiet. Have to make sure I'm not going quiet all the time. And Philomena often tells me I'm going quiet, and she struggles to pull the audio back. So I've got to be careful of that. But what this essentially does is removes noise. That's not technically what it's used for, but that's how you can use it, and that's how we use it. And what I'll do is I'll just zoom in so you can see some of the settings I've got if you're ever trying to set this up yourself, because it took me ages to figure out this, because the help for Behringer products is notoriously bad. Okay, so next thing we're going to go into is we're going to go into a compressor here, and this is the Pro XL MDX 2600. Sorry, the Multigate was the XR 4400. Don't need this model. There's one with 2 gates on it. I've got one before, but I only use one, so you don't need all these gates. Now you can get gates built into things like compressors. So you can see expander gate there. Let me show you that expander gate there. But this expander gate is very, very basic. This one actually does the job properly. So now we're going to go into the compressor, and that's going to lift up the quiet bits of my voice and kill any loud bits. And then out of that, we then come daisy chain out of that again, and we come to this Ultramatch Pro. The reason I need the Ultramatch Pro is because all of this is analog. This will take the analog signal, create a digital, which sends it into the back of the TVS. The TVS needs a digital signal. It won't take all this analog, so you have to buy this to convert it. So that's all that does, essentially. All that stuff comes to the audio, comes through, the video comes through. I've been filming live, and now I come to my recording device, and I use a Blackmagic design. This is the Hyperdeck Shuttle 2. This is a really basic piece of kit, and it's quite expensive. I think it's about 220, 250 pounds. And then when you first get it, you're like, well, it doesn't do anything. Essentially what this allows me to do is put an SSD drive in. So I've got 240 gigabytes, some 240 gigabyte SSD drives. I pop them in there, and I just hit record. Literally, it's like an old VHS player. You hit record, and then you can record everything you're doing over on here and here, and you just get one long piece of video content which you can then chop up later in post. So I'm not stopping and starting, I'm recording continuously because this device allows me to. So that's how I'm recording. It's a good piece of kit. There are other options on the marketplace. Now you can see a little mini mixer here. If you're wondering what that is, when I do my Hangouts on there, you're going to see my ATR 2020 here on an arm with the pop filter. I was running my Hangouts through my system, but Google Chrome and Hangouts just hog resource on any sort of PC. So if I try and bring anything else in, it was causing, like, I crashed 2 Hangouts. I crashed, and I was the host, and 2 of my Hangouts crashed. So I've just decided to go to, I just use the MacBook Pro now with this. And this then ATR 2020, always make sure you face it the right way. I see people facing that as if that's the top of the mic. That's the front. In fact, it'll say back on here to show you that that's the front. So you want to speak into that. Very good mic, very well known. I just got that on a boom arm. That then goes in to this very low budget Xenyx 802. Problem with the 802 is it doesn't have a USB output. So now I've got the UCA22 converter, another Behringer, does the job. All that does essentially is takes the audio signals out the back and then outputs a USB, which I can then plug into the Mac, and the Mac sees that as my work mic, and it definitely works with the Mac, which is a bonus. So that's what I use when I do the Hangouts. I just want to show you something else I use for Hangouts if I do use the green screen. Now, if I want to bring all this green screen goodness into a Hangout, which I do sometimes when I want to create a backdrop, I need to take the signal, convert it to Thunderbolt so it can come into my Mac. Now, this Ultra Studio mini recorder, it's about £150, so it's not cheap, but it takes an SDI from the back of the TVS, which, if you remember, was in here. So that's the TVS there, Studio. There's an output now that comes out that will come into the mini recorder, and that will convert to Thunderbolt. So now it's an input into the Mac. Now I could record then straight to the Mac, but I use Hangouts, use this into the Mac and then to Hangouts. So there's a free version of Wirecast which I use with the mini recorder, and that then shows me my usage. And that was my problem, even with a MacBook Pro, the 13-inch with an i5 processor and 8 GB of RAM. But you do need a powerful PC, because I found that the Wirecast software with this and the output, because by the way this takes the full output, so this is not compressing anything down. I found that Wirecast was just taking about 60-70% of the resource. Hangouts wants about 60-70%, and you can figure out what happens when you're asking the machine for 120-140% for the two. So I did find that a bit of a problem. So I hope you found that useful, and that you can get an idea of some of the things if you want to do hardware green screen. Now, I have a Udemy course that teaches you how to do this, and all you need is a PC and some software. But this is very, very stable, what I'm using here. So this is why I use this, and I just walk into the studio and go. But I wanted to encourage you to think about creating a studio space. If you're going to be recording lots of Udemy instructional videos, and talking heads especially, you pretty much need a studio if you're going to get consistency, because you're going to add different videos at different times. And one of the other things I've learned is try not to be too fancy with your keynote presentations. Try not to worry too much about being, having really fancy graphics in the background. A simple keynote presentation can be quite powerful and compelling. So I just want to thank you for watching. Any questions, please leave them in the discussion area or the comments below. Obviously, sign up for subscribe to the YouTube channel. I appreciate that. And if there's anything I can help you with, just comment below. Hope you enjoyed seeing the studio. Forgive me for the rough and ready YouTube style camera on a monopod shoot, but I just wanted to do this quickly because I see a lot of questions around these types of subjects, and I thought that would really help some people understand how I'm dealing with, how I'm lighting, how my green screen set up, some of the common issues you have, and also some of the issues around the audio that could be solved with the right equipment. So thank you for watching.